Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, exactly at 3:30 a.m., and wondered what to do? Maybe you felt uneasy, like something was happening, but you couldn't quite put your finger on it. It's not just a coincidence. Padre Pio, with all his spiritual wisdom and experience, warned about moments like this. He understood the power of spiritual times and knew that when something like this happens, you must be prepared. The truth is, at this time, something special is at play, something you need to understand to protect your soul and your home. Padre Pio knew that at certain times of the night, the spiritual world becomes more intense. The Bible speaks of how spiritual forces act around us, and this specific time, 3:30 a.m., is a moment when evil might try to attack us. What many people don't know is that if you wake up at this hour, you're not there by accident. Padre Pio taught that in these moments, it's crucial to act with faith and protection. But what should you do? What are the powerful words that can help you ward off any spiritual attack? We're about to reveal that now. Get ready, because what you're about to learn might change the way you view those moments when you wake up in the middle of the night. When you understand the significance of this hour and know what to say, you'll be stronger than ever to face the spiritual challenges that arise. As Padre Pio taught us, it's in prayer and devotion that we find true protection. When you wake up at 3:30 a.m., it's not just your body manifesting fatigue or the routine of the previous day. There's a much deeper spiritual phenomenon happening at that moment. Padre Pio always warned about spiritual times when evil tries to act, and this one, in particular, is a time of great vulnerability. The hour of 3:30 a.m., according to many Christian traditions, is not simply a period of rest, but a moment when the enemy tries to attack souls that aren't prepared for the spiritual battle. That's why understanding what's happening at this time can be crucial for your protection. The Bible speaks of times when evil works in the shadows, at night, when we are most vulnerable. The early morning, especially between 3 o'clock and 3:30 a.m., is seen as a period when intense spiritual forces are in motion. Padre Pio understood this deeply and knew these attacks could affect our inner peace and our connection with God. Often, people wake up at this time and feel an inexplicable discomfort, a sense of restlessness, or even fear. This is not just a normal worry, it's an attempt to pull the person away from the path of prayer and spiritual protection. When we wake up at this time, it's crucial to understand what's at stake. Evil uses these moments to try to divert our attention from God, bringing distractions or feelings of distress. So, it's not just a simple awakening, it's an opportunity to strengthen your faith. Padre Pio knew that when the soul is alert at this time, it's the perfect moment to invoke God's presence and ask for protection from spiritual forces. And so, the mere fact of being awake at this hour can be a divine sign, an opportunity to use prayer and devotion as weapons against evil. In Christian tradition, the 3 a.m. hour carries deep meaning, especially because it's seen as a time of great spiritual battle. The Bible not only mentions the significance of time, but also highlights the power of the early morning. When Jesus Christ was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he prayed during the early hours, in a moment of agony and intense spiritual challenges. This period, which stretches until 3:30 a.m., is interpreted by many scholars as a window where evil tries to infiltrate our lives. Prayer at this time, as exemplified by Jesus, becomes a spiritual fortress, where the soul can unite with God more intensely. Padre Pio himself recognized the importance of this time. He knew that during the early morning, spiritual struggle intensifies, and this is the moment we need to stay vigilant. Often, what seemed like an involuntary awakening could have a much deeper spiritual connotation. When the mind is free of distractions and the body is at rest, the soul is more susceptible to spiritual attacks. Christian tradition, then, teaches that if we wake up at this time, we should use it as an opportunity to reinforce our faith and deepen our connection with God. This is not the time for worry or doubt, but for focused, deep prayer. Many saints, including Padre Pio, knew that spiritual times like this were divine invitations to seek God's presence. During those moments of vulnerability, when darkness seems to envelop the soul, divine light can penetrate more powerfully. The early morning is, therefore, a kind of testimony of faith, where every prayer becomes more powerful, each word more connected with the divine. When you wake up at this time, it's important to keep in mind that the spiritual battle is being fought, and it's through prayer, faith, and devotion that we can overcome the invisible challenges around us. Padre Pio, with his unique spiritual gift, had a deep understanding of the invisible battles we fight in our lives. He knew that along our faith journey, there would be times when the forces of evil would try to lead us astray, especially during the most vulnerable times, like 3:30 a.m. For him, these moments of restlessness and discomfort were not coincidences, but spiritual warnings. What seemed like a simple awakening could, in fact, be an invitation to stay firm in prayer and devotion to God. Padre Pio taught us that when the soul is alert at this time, it is the perfect opportunity to invoke divine protection. What he warned us about these moments of restlessness is that often, the enemy tries to attack us in subtle ways, like distracting our minds or pulling us away from prayer. When we wake up at this hour, it's as if evil is challenging us, trying to destabilize our spiritual peace. However, Padre Pio guided us not to fall into the temptations of despair or anguish. Instead, he suggested that we take an active stance of faith. Rather than feeling weak or frightened, we should view these moments as an opportunity to deepen our connection with God. It's not just simple discomfort, it's a reminder to remain firm and spiritually alert. He also urged us to be prepared because these moments of spiritual adversity are also invitations to strengthen our devotional life. When we wake up at 3:30 a.m. and feel a disturbing presence, Padre Pio instructed us to pray immediately. And not just any prayer, but a powerful prayer with words of protection and faith, like those invoking the Holy Family. He knew these moments were crucial, and our spiritual attitude toward them could define the intensity of our spiritual protection. By following Padre Pio's example, we learn that true spiritual strength doesn't come from the absence of challenges, but from our ability to face them with unwavering faith and devotion. Padre Pio, with his spiritual wisdom, always emphasized the importance of using powerful words to ward off evil, especially in moments of vulnerability. When you wake up at 3:30 a.m. and feel a disturbing presence or an inexplicable discomfort, Padre Pio recommended invoking the three powerful words, Jesus, Mary, Joseph. These words, seemingly simple, are a refuge of spiritual protection, not only for who they represent but also for the divine strength they carry. By invoking the names of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, you're calling on the Holy Family, which represents the perfect union of faith, love, and divine protection. When we speak these words, it's not just a formula for protection, but an act of surrender and trust in God. Padre Pio taught that when you recite these words with sincerity, you place yourself under the direct protection of the Holy Family. Jesus, as the Savior, is our Redeemer and the source of all spiritual protection. Mary, as our Mother, is the intercessor who guides us with a maternal love, and Joseph, as the protector of the Holy Family, is a model of faith and courage. Each time you invoke these names with true faith, you are, in fact, calling upon divine power to repel the forces of evil. These three words are not just a shield against evil, but also a way to reaffirm our trust in God. When you feel fear or restlessness, by saying, Jesus, Mary, Joseph, you're reconnecting with the divine and strengthening your soul. Padre Pio knew that evil often works when we are weakest or most vulnerable. That's why he taught us to use these words as an act of faith, to remind us that divine protection is always within reach, as long as we call upon it with an open heart. By applying this teaching, you'll realize that even in the darkest hours, God's light is always present. When you wake up at 3:30 a.m., you may feel unsettled, with an inexplicable weight on your chest or a sense that something is not right. This is the perfect moment to remember the transformative power of prayer, something Padre Pio always emphasized in his life. He believed that prayer is not just a moment of connection with God, but also a spiritual defense against the attacks of evil. If you find yourself awake at this hour, don't let the restlessness take over. Instead, use this moment to strengthen your faith and seek divine protection. Prayer, especially in times of discomfort, has the power to ward off evil and bring peace to the soul. Padre Pio always said that when we wake up during the night, especially at 3:30 a.m., we shouldn't just go back to sleep without reflecting on what is happening. For him, these moments were not coincidences. He taught that when we wake up at these times, we should turn to God in prayer, not only to ask for protection but also to deepen our connection with Him. Prayer in moments of restlessness is not just a request, but an act of resistance against the forces of evil trying to lead us astray. When you pray sincerely, especially in a moment of discomfort, you are aligning yourself with divine strength and reinforcing your faith. Instead of giving in to anxiety or fear, seize the opportunity to practice a devotional prayer. It could be a simple prayer, like the Our Father or the Hail Mary, or even a passage from Psalm 23, which is a classic request for divine protection. Padre Pio knew that these moments of spiritual vulnerability are, in fact, precious chances to grow in faith and strengthen the spirit. When you pray in these moments, You are, in fact, inviting God's presence to repel any negative forces and seeking the peace that only He can offer. The simple act of praying transforms the environment and protects the soul. Waking up at 3:30 a.m. may seem like something simple, but in reality, this moment carries deep meaning for Christian spirituality. When the body is resting and the mind is free from the distractions of the day, the soul becomes more sensitive to spiritual stimuli, whether for good or evil. Padre Pio understood that when you wake up at this hour, it's not just a coincidence, but a spiritual invitation to focus on prayer and prepare to face spiritual challenges. Many times, evil tries to take advantage of these moments of vulnerability to invade our mind and heart, but it is precisely at these hours that we can find an even greater divine strength. In many Christian traditions, waking up during the early morning is seen as a sign that the spiritual battle is at its peak. The enemy, aware of the strength of our faith and prayer, tries to distract us at this hour to prevent us from experiencing the peace that God wants to give us. Padre Pio advised that if you wake up at 3:30 a.m., it's not a moment to simply go back to sleep, but rather to strengthen yourself in prayer. When we wake up during these spiritual hours, we are at the intersection between the physical and spiritual worlds, where our connection with God can be intensified. Instead of letting yourself be consumed by discomfort or fear, use this moment to reinforce your faith and devotion. This is the perfect moment for a brief prayer or reflection. When you do this, you are aligning yourself with God's purpose, using the time He offers you to grow spiritually. Padre Pio taught that these moments are precious opportunities to strengthen the spirit and resist the temptations of the enemy. When we wake up at this time, we should see it as an invitation to seek God's protection and trust that He is always with us, even in the most challenging hours. When you wake up at 3:30 a.m. and feel that something is out of place, the rosary becomes one of the most powerful weapons against any spiritual disturbance. Padre Pio knew this and always recommended that his followers use the rosary to protect themselves during times of vulnerability. By praying the rosary, you're not just repeating words, but truly connecting with God, with Mary, and with all the saints. He taught that by praying with devotion and intention, the rosary can ward off the forces of evil and bring peace to the heart. This simple act of faith, performed with concentration, can be the key to restoring your spiritual serenity. The rosary is not just a sequence of prayers, it is a means of union with the sacred. When evil tries to invade your mind during these moments of restlessness, the rosary acts as a spiritual wall, an invisible protection that prevents the entry of negative influences. Padre Pio knew that by invoking the mysteries of Christ and Mary through the rosary, you strengthen yourself against any attack. The repetition of prayers helps align the mind with God, allowing the power of His presence to manifest more clearly in your life. Therefore, if you wake up at night and feel a disturbing presence, begin praying the rosary immediately. Each Hail Mary and Our Father is a prayer of power. In times of great anguish or confusion, the rosary offers a peace that transcends human understanding. Padre Pio always said that even in the darkest hours, when everything seems lost, the rosary brings a light that illuminates our spiritual path. When we wake up in the early morning, especially at 3:30 a.m., it's an opportunity to remind ourselves of this divine strength. The rosary, when prayed with the faith of a sincere heart, becomes not only a defense against evil but also a way to console the soul and allow God's grace to fill the inner voids. Use it as a key to open doors of spiritual protection. Spiritual perseverance is one of the most difficult virtues to maintain, especially when we find ourselves in moments of spiritual challenge, like when we wake up in the middle of the night. When fatigue overwhelms us or fear visits us, it's easy to succumb to the temptation to give up or go back to sleep, but it is precisely at these hours that our faith is most demanded. Padre Pio teaches us that perseverance in prayer, especially in times of difficulty like these, strengthens our soul and brings us closer to God. Faith is not something we cultivate only when everything is fine, but especially when difficulties arise. During moments of spiritual fragility, like when we wake up at 3:30 a.m., the spiritual battle intensifies. Evil tries to divert us from prayer and communion with God, offering distractions or the temptation to rest more. But as Padre Pio teaches us, spiritual perseverance is key. He reminded us that even when we're tired, our prayer has immense power to push away negative forces. If you wake up at this hour, instead of letting exhaustion take over, choose to remain firm in prayer. It's not about how much you pray, but about the consistency and sincerity of your heart. Spiritual perseverance in the early mornings is like an exercise for the soul. Each moment of prayer made with a focused heart strengthens faith, and even in the hours of greatest fatigue, The act of continuing to pray brings invisible results in the spiritual realm. When you choose not to give up, when you keep praying even with heavy eyes and a tired mind, you are allowing God to work powerfully in your life. As Padre Pio taught, it is in spiritual battles that we find the greatest victories, and perseverance is the key to overcoming any obstacle the enemy places in our way. Spiritual times are crucial moments for the battle between good and evil, and the early morning, especially at 3:30 a.m., is a battlefield where intense spiritual forces come into play. Padre Pio, with his great wisdom, knew that evil tries to infiltrate during these hours of vulnerability, when the body is resting and the mind is free of distractions. Religion teaches us that, at these moments, it's important to be vigilant. The enemy often works in the shadows, trying to divert our attention from God. But when we are aware of this, we can use these times as an opportunity to strengthen our connection with the divine and protect ourselves from any spiritual attack. Padre Pio deeply understood the spiritual dynamics of these moments. He knew that when we are awake during the early morning, especially between 3 o'clock and 3:30 a.m., we are at a point of intersection between the physical and spiritual worlds. Evil tries to attack us when we are most vulnerable, but it is also at this moment that we can call upon divine strength with greater intensity. Prayer at this hour is not just an act of faith, but an active response against evil. By recognizing this period as a time of spiritual battle, we can prepare to resist and overcome negative forces. Each prayer made at this hour carries powerful energy, reflecting our resistance against spiritual temptations. Padre Pio always urged his followers to be attentive, using these moments of restlessness as opportunities to strengthen their faith. When you wake up at this time and feel the presence of evil, know that by praying and seeking divine protection, you are winning this battle. Evil tries to invade our thoughts and hearts, but prayer, especially during these spiritual moments, gives us the power to expel any negative influence and affirm God's sovereignty over our lives. In times of despair, when fear seems to take over and difficulties seem unbearable, it is faith that can lift us up. Padre Pio always believed that even when everything seemed lost, our faith in God was what gave us the strength to endure. Faith is like a foundation that keeps us steady, even in the fiercest storms. When you wake up at 3:30 a.m. and feel vulnerable, it is faith that strengthens your soul, allowing you to face any spiritual battle. Padre Pio taught us that in these moments of fragility, trust in God can transform the situation and bring peace, even in the darkest hours. The Bible is full of teachings about how faith can strengthen us in adversity. When life challenges us, it often feels like we're alone, but in reality, faith in Jesus Christ is a constant source of strength. Padre Pio knew this and always encouraged us to keep faith alive, especially in times of difficulty. By invoking God's presence, you're not just asking for help but reaffirming your trust in His divine plan. Faith is not just a passive belief. It's a powerful action that activates divine intervention in our lives. When you wake up in the middle of the night in moments of restlessness, your faith is your first defense against spiritual attacks. When you face life's challenges with faith, no matter how desperate the situation seems, you are declaring that God is greater than any adversity. Padre Pio reminded us that even in our darkest moments, it's our faith that connects us to the power of God. When you find yourself in anguish, remember that faith is the key that opens the doors to peace and divine protection. No matter how weak or lost you may feel, faith has the power to restore your inner strength and transform your life. Now that you've learned the importance of waking up at 3:30 a.m. and how to respond to this moment with the powerful words Padre Pio taught us, it's time to act. Don't underestimate the power of these small words. When evil tries to attack us, it often takes advantage of moments of weakness, like sleep or insecurity. But now, with the knowledge you have, you can protect yourself and strengthen your faith immediately. Remember, every prayer you make, every word you say, has an impact on the spiritual world. And, with faith, these words can drive away any negative influence. The question now is, what will you do the next time you wake up at this hour? Will you allow restlessness to take over, or will you use the power of Padre Pio's words to bring peace and protection into your life? Don't let these moments pass by unnoticed. Every early morning is an opportunity to strengthen your connection with God, repel evil, and reinforce the protection over your life and your family. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep learning how to use the power of prayer to transform your life. Divine protection is within your reach, you just have to act with faith. Now that you have this knowledge, don't forget to apply it. With each early morning, you are more prepared to face spiritual challenges and protect what is yours. Remember, it is in your devotion and faith that true strength is found.